Manchester United, can it be as bad as last year?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? For anybody else in any other circumstances, last season for Manchester United would have been probably fairly miraculous. And actually, I'm sure they're still sitting there trying to work out how they can end up with 89 points and not be champions. And it's certainly, history tells us that 89 points, no team has ever got that many and finished second in the Premier League. So you can't really imagine how horrendous it must have felt for all sorts of reasons for Manchester United. And I think they probably have enough winning history under their belt to be able to try and take that on the chin. And I'm sure that Alex Ferguson will have been plotting since probably the morning after he woke up after Sergio Aguero's goal to try and establish a way of recapturing the title that they still regard as predominantly theirs.
Is one of those challenges maybe how exactly things are going to work at the back? Because I know we look at Rio Ferdinand now and we're not sure exactly where he is. Vidic still playing at a high level and he's fit but has had concerns with injuries. Is that a big area for Ferguson this year?
Well, I mean, the upshot is that David De Gea is now going to be, in a much better place at the start of this season than he was a year ago. So I think when you have a goalkeeper that's set fair, then you're always going to feel a lot more confident about your defensive work. But Rio has had a tough time, and it will be interesting to see how he responds to, what's probably been some quite a lot of soul searching about things that are vaguely to do with football. And Vidic coming back clearly is important, but United will be hoping he's physically in peak fitness again. And Phil Jones, with a year at United under his belt, you would expect to be a little bit less cavalier and raw. But it's time for him to really, be nailed down in a position, because he's got that thing where he sometimes looked like he could play everywhere, and he's got so many qualities that it's time for him maybe to try and make sure that he's got a settled position this season that he can hopefully grow into.
The other disappointing aspect of last season for Manchester United was what happened in Europe. It wasn't just about being pipped at the post by City, which they actually played very well at home, but leaving Europe when they did at the group stage, and then to winning the Champions League at that stage, and then to lose to Bilbao in the manner that they did, was for a club like Manchester United a little bit embarrassing. That's not that's not where they set their standards. Do you think there's any sense? I think in all previous seasons you'd immediately expect Ferguson to be talking about, well, we're going to try and win everything, because that's what Manchester United always does. Do you think there's any sense in a season like this that there is any risk of a need to sort of shift and focus on one tournament over the other, or is it business as usual? Even though we didn't get it last year, we're still trying to win everything, and we think we're capable of doing that.
United have been here before. I mean, Chelsea won successive titles under Mourinho, and people are making premature assumptions that the edifices are crumbling. But I don't think it's reasonable to say after one season of City winning the league that United are not capable anymore. However, I think that for them to really go for it in the Premier League and in Europe is a slightly tougher proposition these days.
Do you think this whole scenario of Manchester City arriving in the way they have, do you think this potentially extends Ferguson's career? Because we know he relishes these challenges, we know that he likes to rise on that, or does it potentially shorten his career if this becomes the one that he can't overcome? I
just think that Ferguson is in a kind of tunnel vision about United and about winning. And I think it will hurt if Manchester City are a team that prevent them from extending their CV and their honours list. However, I think that it's very simple. If Alex Ferguson looks at his players and doesn't think they're capable of winning and doesn't think they're capable of really lasting the distance, there's all sorts of issues going on away from the pitch regarding flotations and regarding the ownership, where people have their concerns. But for Ferguson, if he thinks his squad is not strong enough to compete at the highest level, and he can't convince the powers that be that they should strengthen enough for him to make United competitive, that's when I think he'll be asking himself the ultimate questions. It'll be not a lot to do with anybody else except himself and his own squad.